Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Metal de Facto, Land of the Rising Sun Part 2. This album comes out March 6 on Reaper Entertainment, and it has 10 songs and it's 48 minutes in length. This is the band's third full-length studio album, and they are a Finnish power metal band. Now, from a design standpoint, the album feels straightforward, very simple, but there's no such thing as a simple record. I just think the album leads its way or takes you down a road that just feels very comfortable. And because it feels very comfortable, very accommodating, that sense of simplicity is what comes to the surface. Now, if you analyze this record, I think you're going to find an album that has a lot of growth to it, that develops each and every single song, and while developing each and every single song, it also develops a sense of continuity from song to song. And that's where that simplicity comes in. It's not a record that jolts the listener or that forces the listener to walk a difficult path across it. You just have to sit back and enjoy the ride, and then the album does all the heavy lifting for you. So it's a design that is not just created thinking of what the overall sound is, but also thinking about what the overall experience needs to be. Once you get into the sound of this album, they're always going to be a power metal band. I don't think that's ever going to change. But I feel like on this record, there's other influences that are impacting the sound in a more direct way, and therefore having a more clear impact overall as far as the big picture is concerned. You're going to see elements of epic power metal, epic metal, even prog on this record. Adding those influences, adding those elements, allows their power metal sound to be richer, to have more texture, to be wider, to be a more opulent, a bigger sounding record all around. Bringing in old school power metal elements, merging those with more modern fantasy epicness as far as the ambiance is concerned, definitely creates a more modern sounding album, but never forgetting the roots of the band and the roots of the genre. So it's an album that walks this fine line between what the past used to be like and what the future looks like. And I think a lot of that fantasy world plays an important role also in terms of the themes of the songs, and in order to better create a visual idea of what these songs are about. It's very hard to have a theme concept driven record and then not creating the sound that allows that imagery to become complete. And I think the more epicness or the more epic sound that this album has is a complete direct result of the songwriting and the idea behind the influences behind each and every single song and the overall record itself. And all of that is really coming from the keys. The synths on this album play such a key role, such an important role in the overall definition of the atmosphere of the album and the individual atmosphere of each and every single song and the sound in general. They almost work as one of the main catalysts, if not the main catalyst, of the overall sound experience on this record. I was a little bit surprised that the album took that approach. I was a little bit surprised that they gave the keys such a predominant role top to bottom. Obviously, there's some songs where the keys play perhaps more of a secondary role, but overall, the impact that they have on each and every single song is undeniable. And I don't think you can create that opulent sound. I don't think you can create that fantasy world style approach without the keys, without the synths playing a role in it. So it's not surprising the role that they play, it's just surprising how much of an impact that role has. Then when you look at the guitars are perhaps the one element, the one piece of the puzzle that suffers the most, considering how focused the attention becomes on the keys. This is not to say that the guitars are not important on this album or don't sound great on this album, because the guitars sound phenomenal on this record. I still felt like they gave that power to power metal. They still added oomph to the songs. They added drive. In some cases, they added heaviness and size. But it's very difficult to put the guitars on a pedestal or allow them to be the main driver of the experience on this record when the album overall has such a fantasy epic connotation to it, driven by that synth sound. So if there was one element that lost a little bit of room to breathe because of how much room the keys took, is definitely the guitars. Once you get into the drums, I felt like the drums had a great sound, great size, really helping, at times even helping the guitars really shape the opulent nature of the sound, not just with size, but adding thickness within that size, which I think it's really important for an album that has this much of a fantasy lore behind it. It's very easy to create a very thin experience with that sound, or almost allowing that sound to dissipate into thin air. So pushing the drums a little bit more to the forefront and adding a little bit size on the drum sound definitely allows that overall thin atmosphere or thin veil of fantasy to not thin out the tracks and still allow the album to feel very opulent and very robust. So the drums play a very important role in emphasizing the impact of the guitars at times, but overall emphasizing the impact of the sound, the thickness, and the robust nature of it from within. Once you get into the vocals, Aitor sounds amazing. This dude is a great vocalist. It reminds me a lot of Fabio Leone in terms of his delivery, his range, his style, the way the vocals and words come together. Such a great performance throughout this entire record. I thought the album really came alive with his performance. He has such a great range, and he doesn't hold back throughout the entire album. I think this is an album that both vocally and sonically represents well the themes of each individual song and the overall theme of the record. I think everything really ties in perfectly together, creating another solid Metal de Facto record, one that I see a huge growth from their debut album to this album. The songwriting has changed, has improved, has become more technical, has become more texture. The songs on this album feel more opulent, they feel bigger, they feel like they have more to offer, and that's where some of that progginess really comes at play, allowing not everything to feel just straightforward and simple. The songs take you in a more complicated path to get to where you need to go. So it's a great record by Metal de Facto. Once again, a record that definitely showcases the growth and development of the band over the last couple of records. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with My Plastic Escape. This is a very epic sounding song, really bringing that fantasy lore, that epicness to life, and obviously the keys play a huge role in that sort of experience. The guitars and drums on this track definitely add size, thickness, heaviness, making the sound feel much bigger and more powerful. An interesting aspect of this track, and one of the reasons I pick it, is because the vocals have a lot of layers to them. So the size that the song has sonically is matched by the size of the vocal delivery and of the vocal presence. I thought that was an important aspect of the song, and something that allows this song to stand out the moment you're listening to it. It's not just about how heavy the guitars can get with the drums, it's not just about the overall epicness and fantasy world experience created by the keys, but it's also creating an experience vocally that matches both of those size-wise. Then you have Pen is Mightier Than the Sword. Amazing guitars. The guitars on this track have a lot more room to breathe, have a lot more room to maneuver, and I think there's a simple reason for that. The keys don't play as much of a defining role on this song as in others. This is a more traditional, old school power metal song through and through. The synths, the keys are still there, specifically once you get to the chorus. The chorus is very synth based, and the fantasy lore and the epicness really comes through in that chorus, and it's undeniable that it comes through in that chorus because of the way the synths impact. But the verses are more stripped down in terms of removing the synths from the big picture and allowing guitars, drums, and bass to really be the core focus of the sound, adding a lot of power to power metal with that sort of experience. Very dynamic between the two. I believe adding a synth solo to this song emphasizes the epicness that you get in that chorus and kind of keeps it alive and well during periods of time where it's just not there, because the song becomes a lot more stripped down and a lot more robust. And speaking of stripped down, I had to pick Wheel of the Rising Sun. This is a super interesting song because the verses of the song feel very stripped down, especially the way the song starts off. Vocals and bass together, working as one, really allowing the song to build up. This is a track that builds up, morphs, grows, and develops. The chorus is definitely the climax of that growth, of that development. I like the backing vocals that they used in the chorus, almost like a choir behind the main vocals. This allows the song to have two very different experiences. The verses sound like a ballad, very stripped down, vocals, bass, and then the chorus sounds like a power metal hymn. It's really a mixture of two different worlds, of two different styles of songs, of two completely different experiences, but they made it in a way that you almost feel like one is just the result of the other. It's so natural. The sequence of these two experiences, very unique and different experiences in a single song, is not jolting at all. It's very fluid, very dynamic, really well merged, really well delivered, creating a great song that closes off the record, bringing in elements that you found throughout the entire album. The fantasy side of the sound of the record, the epicness of the album itself, the power metal side of the record, the ballads that come with power metal and the experience that always comes associated with that, but also the more driven sound, the great choirs, the great backing vocals, the hymn aspect. This song just kind of has it all, and I think it's a great way of closing off a record with such a song that ties in all the loose ends together in one single place. This is it, Metal de Facto with Land of the Rising Sun, Part 2, once again out March 6 on Reaper Entertainment. Let me know your thoughts on the band, hit me up in the comment section, and I'll see you all at the next one. Take care, guys.